My first stab at the Hammer Dracula movies was Prince of Darkness, which I believe is the third entry and the second featuring Christopher Lee as the blood-sucking count. I thought it was a neat little film, spooky and quite atmospheric. 1958's Dracula, or as it's known in some places, the horror of Dracula, starts off with Jonathan Harker starting to work for the Count in his castle as a librarian. There were some neat twists in the first 20 minutes or so, mild spoilers here. The first is that, unlike most Dracula movies, the main guy here actually already knows Dracula is a vampire and secretly took the post as a means to kill him. The second is that this character Harker ends up succumbing to Dracula and gets turned into one, with the film then focusing on his friend, Van Helsing, played by Peter Cushing, trying to track down his friend, who also knows who Dracula is. I have to say, I wasn't too impressed with this movie. It had several notable issues. Bar the opening 20 minutes, almost every scene was painstakingly telegraphed in where it was headed. A lack of originality in plot can be made up by, an abundance of spooky atmosphere, but this is where the movie's biggest sin lies. It has no atmosphere. It's completely flat. It's lifeless and made with the energy of someone who has chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm guessing the budget wasn't exactly exuberant. There's one set that I think was used for at least 3 different places in the film, and I thought the film had a lot of colours for a film of its type, when you'd expect it to be faded and gothic, but at the same time the colours lacked intensity, so it was neither here nor there. As the vampire himself, again I was quite unimpressed with Christopher Lee. It's funny, I found him much more intimidating and scary in Dracula Prince of Darkness, where he doesn't speak and is often seen ominously from a distance. In this movie, I was taken aback at how when Lee opens his mouth, he pretty much just comes off as a mild, polite geography teacher. The voice doesn't suit. He looks great when the fangs are out and the contacts and when he's snarling and hissing, but there is zero screen presence otherwise. This is something that shocked me quite a bit, about how indifferent I was to the portrayal of Dracula in one of his most famous movies. When I was a kid growing up, Lee was terrific as a menacing character in the Middle-earth movies and the Star Wars prequels. Maybe he needed his deep, booming voice from his later years to make an impression. I liked Cushing on the other hand. I thought he did okay as the vampire hunter. It has to be said, there were some really dumb characters in the movie. I mean, the Prometheus school of stupid. So much so that without the imbecilic decisions there wouldn't be a movie. Harker, for instance, is fully aware that Dracula is a vampire, and yet turns up at the castle wholly unprepared. And when he is presented with the opportunities to stake the fanged bastard once and for all, he decides to do the wife first. He decides to stake Dracula's bride first, leaving enough time for Dracula to conveniently wake up and stop the shenanigans. Speaking of which, what's with all the characters deciding to go vampire hunting when it's just about to get dark and you lose your only advantage? Why not go early in the morning? There isn't any eeriness in this film. It isn't scary. It isn't campy either. So what the hell is it? A harmless way to spend an evening, sure, but little else. I give it a 6 out of 10.